Roy Jones Jr. I know you brought him up as one of the best fighters or athletes ever, and I know you've compared him with Sugar Ray Robinson on online things, and people just go crazy. What do you think of Roy Jones Jr. As an all-time great?
Oh man, there's no doubt. Like, whenever I think of an all-time great, I always think of him in his prime. That's when he was. You don't think of like Ray Robinson is the only guy that really gets a pass. Like Ray Robinson lost 19 fights. I don't know if people know that. He lost 19 fights, but he gets a pass. They say he's the greatest of all time. But Roy Jones, at the end of his career, he was getting beat, and they say that's not why he's a great. And I go, well, Ray Robinson got the same pass. What are you talking about? So my thing is, in his prime, Sugar Ray Robinson was a phenomenon. Well, Roy Jones was too. I don't care what happened when he was 40. It makes no difference what happened. I mean, people need to realize he was like, I believe, 35 years old when he got knocked out by Tarver. And that's not taking anything away from Tarver, because Tarver called it, he planned it, he landed that shot. He beat the great Roy Jones and everything. But Roy was 35 years old. From the time Roy turned pro until he was 35, he was virtually untouchable. And even on his off nights, he was still a beast. And, in his prime, he was beating guys who were very good fighters, like Thomas Tate, very good fighter. James Toney, very good fighter. Bernard Hopkins, Percy Harris, Jorge Castro. These guys are good fighters. And Roy was beating them, and there was no question, about it. And, in terms of who would beat who, in his prime, at, say, 168 pounds, I just can't see anybody beating Roy.
I think I can't see, number one, I can't see anybody having a better resume than Sugar Ray Robinson, even with 19 losses. I just can't. To me, if you compare him and Roy Jones, their resumes, it's almost laughable. But if you got the athlete, Roy Jones at his prime and a prime Sugar Ray Robinson, I don't know, man. I think I would probably put money on Roy Jones. Again, resumes and the actual fighter are two separate things. Everybody seems to point at resumes when you compare a fighter against another fighter, but the actual fight itself, I don't know what Sugar Ray Robinson would be able to do with the lightning bolt of Roy Jones's hands. I just if you picture all the guys that Ray Robinson fought, whether it be far down like Basilio or even at a prime with Lamada, those guys didn't have the hand speed that Roy Jones does. And if Robinson felt a little bit of that speed, he'd be in awe, or he would hold back like, well, what do I do here? I'm sure he would be a little stunned by it.
Right. Well, here's the thing that I think a lot of people miss. Like Robinson fought the legends, no doubt about it. But you can't watch Basilio and these guys and tell me that Roy Jones wouldn't beat these guys.
Yeah.
I mean, there's come on, there's no way. Roy was phenomenal, and these guys, like a lot of these guys were made to order. Like they were like Roy would have slaughtered some of these guys. They were legends, the legends. And here's the problem with Ray and Roy, is that Ray at his best was at 147, and Roy at his best was 168. So at 160, here's two things I can say. One, Robinson was great at 160. Roy wasn't as great maybe as he was at 168, but also Robinson lost a lot of fights at 160. Like he got beat quite a few times by guys that I could never see beating Roy. So, I think Robinson at his best 147 and Roy's 168. So, two different guys, That's different true. Weight classes. At middleweight, Roy wasn't quite as polished as he was later on. He wasn't as and he was still great. But I think it's hard to compare them because they were a little off track. There was the prime didn't match up.
What's pretty sad, when I think about it, Roy Jones was that guy that I used to watch and hoping that he would lose because I was like, there's something about this guy. I don't know if it was his cockiness, if it was his how he talked or what it was. But it wasn't until he lost to Tarver, where he was knocked out, where I started appreciating Roy and the things he brought. Like for some reason, it like humanized him, where I started liking him. But then by that point, his fights after where he started losing, is what he's judged for today, and that's what he'll probably always be seen for. If you bring up Roy Jones against, let's say, a light heavyweight of today, people are going to say, "Well, oh, Tarver knocked him out," but they don't realize.
Right. Well, you know what? I'll tell you a funny thing. When he was younger, when he was, put it this way, and this is a fact. This is a fact. When he turned pro, when we all turned pro basically at the same time. We call like the class of '88. So, you had William Guthrie and myself and Darren Allen and Riddick Bowe and all these different guys turned pro around the same time. Roy was the only one, including Gerald McClellan, who I could say I was sure this guy was going to be world champion. There was no doubt in my mind. I told everyone years before that, I said, this guy's going to be world champion. Bet your house on it. There's no way this guy's not world champion. There was no way. And like even Gerald McClellan, who turned out to be a beast. A lot of people forget Gerald, early in his pro, and we're talking pro, Gerald lost to Dennis Milton, who was a very great amateur and, solid pro. But he also lost to Ralph Ward, who you probably never even heard of. Ralph Ward beat Gerald McClellan. So if you're going to tell me Ralph Ward is going to beat Roy Jones, you got to seek psychiatric help because there's no way possible, So, Roy was special. And people, what I notice, people that don't like him, like to this day, they still won't give him credit. They almost like despise him. The people that say, "Oh, but Roy Jones got knocked out by Tarver," and I say, "Man, he was 35. Relax, man. I'm talking about him at 25." Now, those are the same type of people who say, "Yeah, Muhammad Ali, he was a draft dodger, and I don't think he was a great, as great as he said." And I go, "Well, it's kind of coincidental that everybody who thinks he was a draft dodger also doesn't think Muhammad Ali was a great fighter." Same thing with Roy. Like they don't like Roy's cockiness or whatever it is. And he wasn't a great fighter. I go, why can't he be super cocky and you hate him as a man, but he's a great fighter? You can't. Just because you don't like a guy personally doesn't mean he was great. I can look at a guy and go, I can't stand this guy, and I wish I never even saw him in the first place. But he is good. I got to give him that, because if you don't, it diminishes your own credibility. You can't criticize the people you hate or your opponents. That's why, like, you see before a fight, and the guys are always like, "Oh, this guy sucks. I'm going to knock him out in 3 rounds. Who has he fought? What has he done? He's got no power." And I go, well, and I'm always thinking to myself, well, if he's that bad, then A, why are you fighting him? And B, why are you going to brag about it after, when before the fight, all you did was talk about how bad the guy is? Why don't you say, "Hey, man," I like when somebody goes, "Hey, this guy I'm fighting's really good," like he's a tough fight. And that way, when you beat him, you can say, "Hey, man, I told you ahead of time he's good, but I beat him." But if you tell me for 6 weeks that this guy sucks, and then you beat him, what am I supposed to be happy? What am I supposed to be impressed by? You've been telling me this guy wasn't good. I'm not even going to pay to watch it. So I think guys, it's funny. I would respect people more if they would say, I don't like Roy Jones' cockiness and his attitude, but he was good. Yeah. But it seems like all the people who say he wasn't cool, he's not a good guy, he talks too much, they also think he wasn't good. You can't watch him toy. I mean, look, even though Mike McCallum was past his prime, Roy toyed with Mike McCallum. Mm-hmm. Nobody's toying with Mike McCallum. I don't care who you bring. Mm-hmm. They're not toying with Mike McCallum. Roy played with him. Roy was just too good. These guys, he beat a solid level of guy. And I always look at this. Like, people say, "Oh, Roy never fought anybody." I go, come on, man. Like, what are you talking about? Just because you never heard of a guy or he's not undefeated doesn't mean he wasn't good. Look at the guys Roy beat, and then look who they beat. Look how they did with other people. Like Julian, say Thomas Tate, for example. Thomas Tate had just went 12 good rounds with Julian Jackson, who was knocking everyone out dead. He was the biggest puncher of all time, pound for pound. Julian Jackson goes 12 with Thomas Tate. Roy stops Thomas Tate in 2 rounds right after. Well, there you go. I mean, it's Roy beat a lot of good guys that he doesn't get credit for beating.
Yeah, man, especially James Toney. If people knew what James Toney was like, and then if not that Roy Jones beat him in that way, that easily,
right?
That's mind-boggling in itself.
Yeah, he's a phenomenon. Yep.
Oh, absolutely. WBC, good for boxing, bad for boxing, and why? I think I know what your answer is, but I'll ask it anyway. What do you think of the WBC?
For the most part, it still has magic. Like, you want that belt. Like every fighter knows the green belt. They know the WBC belt. They want that belt. You want that. It would be awesome to have a WBC belt in your case, your trophy case, and people come in and they see that and they recognize it like the Super Bowl, like the Iceman Trophy. They know it. But they're killing themselves. They are killing themselves with these USNBC and the silver. I mean, I've been telling people this much for the last couple of years. Now, this is indicative. I've been boxing almost my whole life on, and at a pretty high level. I'm deeply involved, right? I do not have a clue what the WBC silver title is. I could not. If you said, I'll give you $1 million if you tell me what it is accurately, I would have to lose the $1 million because I don't know. I mean, how can it be that I don't know? I don't know, and I don't care. I don't care about anything but the world title. And the WBC, of all the sanctioning bodies, the most recognizable one. I mean, even they're giving honorary titles to people, and they just made this thing, the Bridgerweight champion. They named it after some kid, it was a nice gesture. Some kid, I don't know the story, he got hurt or he was sick or something. So that's his name, Bridger. They have the Bridgerweight championship of the world. I mean, come on, man. Like, if you want to honor the kid and have him at a fight or something, but you're making up a whole new weight class and naming it after a person. We are talking next level insanity. It's just too much. I mean, they're destroying, the history. Like 100 years from now, when people look back on this era, and then they look back on the 70s and their 80s, and they're gonna go, what happened? Like between 1982 and 2020, what happened? Why did they do that? And you have I'll say this much, and if anybody wants to Google it and research it, they can do it. I already did it. From 1885 to 1985. Now that's 100 years, right? And now you go from 1985 to 2021, right? Now what's that? 36 years, right?
Okay.
This is the most sickening statistic that I can tell you. There have been more heavyweight champions in the last 36 years than there were in the previous 100. Now, that's a fact. I Googled it. I looked it up. I counted it one by one. There's been more champions in 36 years than there has been in the previous 100. That is wrong. And that's not an indicativeness of great fighters. That's only that there are too many titles and too many guys who can't hold on to it. Guys held on to the title back in the day for 15 title defenses, 12 title defenses, 7 years, 9 years, 12 years. These guys can't hold on to it once. They can't defend it once. They're 3-time world champions. Up until 1990, there was about 7 of them, 6 of them. Now there's 25 of them in the last 30 years. That's not because people are getting better. That's why when you see a guy today go, oh, Adrian Broner, he's awesome. He's a 4-time world champion. I go, give me a break. I mean, look, really, you're going to compare Adrian, you're going to put Adrian Broner above Alexis Arguello? I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, are you serious? Like that, we should send people to prison who say that. Like if a guy says, Adrian Broner, he's got 4 titles Aguero only had 3. That's it. 10 years. 10 years jail time. You go to Leavenworth for 10 years if you say that, because you do not deserve to be out among the free people. That's not right, man. Period. And that's what's wrong.
The title that I still try to, I scratch my head and try to make sense out of is the Latino title. They have some called. I mean, does that mean that only Latinos can fight for that title? Does that mean that are we going
worse than that?
Are we going backwards in time and now we're segregating again? And I mean, I just don't understand that one.
No, wait till you hear this. I've already looked into that. Do you realize this? Like, when I first heard they had Latino titles, mm-hmm. I thought it meant, all right, you're going to have it among the Hispanic nations. Like a guy from Colombia can fight a guy from, Mexico, right? Yeah. All that means is if you're a Puerto Rican from Los Angeles and you're a Mexican from Chicago, you can fight each other for the WBC Latino title. They have an African title, right? Like for black people.
I do know that.
So, yeah, they got all that. They have, I looked it up. The WBC used to have the WBC world title and the NABF title. That's it, right? And then they had the WBC international title. So that's 3 titles. That's fine, right? North American title was a great title. Now they have something like, I believe it's 18 not world titles, but 18 titles that you could win. They have the US NBC title. They have the WBC youth title. They have the African title, the Latino title. But the Latino is for, you could have Medina could fight, Castillo, for the Latino title. It's not like for Latino countries. It's for American guys. It's really bizarre. But I tell you, it all comes back to the sanctioning bodies. They've got to recoup because of the Racciani situation. So, and I'll tell you this much in a nutshell: there is not a kid on the face of this earth who has or will ever be in a gym and say, man, when I grow up, I can't wait to be a USNBC champion. I can't wait to be the NABF silver champion. I can't wait to be the WBC regular champion. Like, that will never happen. Nobody wants that. They take it because it's cool, and I'll be honest, like, it's funny, but it's real. I was a fighter. I know. Guys want those titles. You know why? They can fool their friends. They can fool girls. They can fool people. Their friend's father will be like, man, Joey's a champion. Man, really? Yeah, he's got a WBC belt. Well, they don't know it's some ridiculous, insane. Like, they have like NABF silver titles now. Are you with me? They have the like silver. NABF silver is freaking insane, but guys don't care because they can get girls with these belts. Like, they can fool friends who I'll tell you what, I had.
And then in the meantime, they're paying the sanctioning fees for it too.
Yeah, but they're paying for that. They're paying for the lie. They're paying for the ability to have a WBC belt, so they can fool people. And look, years ago, I won the World Boxing Federation Intercontinental title. And that was cool because it was a 12-round fight. I got the belt. That's cool. Now, I wanted to fight the top guy, whoever it was. But, I was Intercontinental champion. In the grand scheme of things, it meant nothing. I knew that. But there's guys who would win that, and they would convince their friends and their girlfriend, that they're, world champ or they're this or they're that. And they bring it to fights. And, I've seen guys come to fights, like in the audience, and they have 3 belts with them. And everybody's looking like it's De La Hoya, and it's some guy who you never heard of, and you never heard of any of the belts. But the average person in the audience thinks they're in the presence of boxing royalty. You know what I mean? It's just a bizarre state of affairs. It's really, really strange. And, I'm not a fan of it. And it's almost like the world with politics and the way the world is going now and the direction it's going, and it's going to be past the point of no return. And that's, again, I guess we're already there with boxing, but, silver, like I keep hoping that one day they're going to go, we're sick of it. We're going to abolish our silver title and our youth title. But I know they're not going to. If anything, they're going to have more. And it's just like, I come from an era where a championship was really hard to get, and it was cool if you were just one of the contenders for it. You never got it, but at least you fought for it, or you were in line to fight for it. Now, I make a joke, but I mean it. Like if you're 24 years old and you have over 20 pro fights and you're not a champion of something, you must either be really terrible or your people just don't care. Because if you don't have a belt by now, with all the belts that are out there, I see so many guys with belts, and I'm like, look, no offense, but I mean, who are you? Like you're a champion of what? It's just, a championship is supposed to be, special for special people. And, it's not special when more people have belts. I'll bet you if you go to the top 10 in every major weight class, middleweight, heavyweight, everybody in the top 10 has a belt from someone. They have an NABF, they have a WBC youth, they have a Latino, they have a silver, they have a regular, they have a emeritus, they have something. Everybody's got a belt. How that shouldn't be possible, and it should be stopped. Like I wish the government or somebody would be able to step in and just obliterate. Like we can. I don't know. We got to put locks on the WBC offices or something, because this is. It's really, really disheartening.
Yeah, they have the ICU, the UC the, all these, belts is getting ridiculous.
They're gonna run out of letters, like all the, and it's funny, but really, like I'm like, I actually wrote them all down one day, and I'm like, man, they got WBC, WBA, WBF, WBU. I said, you can't do like WBT, like that doesn't have a ring to it, so you couldn't do that. You can only use ones that have a ring to it. They're running out. You can't. WBZ wouldn't be good. WBT wouldn't be good. WBA wouldn't be good. So all the cool sounding ones are all taken, I think.
And I think at this point, like you're saying, it's pretty almost crazy to think that it would all come under one banner. But like, let's say it did happen, and you were put to be in charge of boxing, and what would be the first things that you would choose? I guess in a million words, I'm asking you, what would you change in boxing to better the sport, aside from all the WBCs and all the titles, but just the sport in general? How do you think it needs to be changed at the moment? Judges, drug testing, rules, what would it be?
Well, I think with the sanctioning bodies, the rules have to be universal, and they have to be enforced, and they have to be followed, because they're not. And I believe this. I believe certain promoters. No, I don't believe this. I mean, it's the way it is. Like, it's a fact. Even if I didn't believe it, but like there's certain promoters who overrule the sanctioning bodies, and by that I mean the sanctioning body is supposed to be the end all be all when it comes to the title fights. They should be, an iron fist. They should be in charge. And they're not. The promoters who are giving them the money are telling them, okay, we're going to do this. They're telling them what we're going to do and who we're going to fight and all these things, because like whenever you hear guys say, oh, the champ, he's got nobody to fight. I go, well, he's got 10 guys to fight. They have rankings. Go to the first guy and fight him. But they don't, because he might not be a lucrative opponent. You might not draw money. So what's the point of being good and being number one in the world if they can't even enforce a mandatory title defense because you're not popular and you don't draw money? That should not come into play. So like in baseball and football, basketball, the worst team will play the best team if they're on the schedule. So the Super Bowl champion in the first game of the following season, as defending world champion, they may play the worst team in the NFL who was 0-16 the year before, because it's on the schedule. They have to play them, and it'll probably be a pretty good game. But in boxing, you can be ranked number one, and they won't push for the fight, even though the rules say they have to. But if you don't draw money and guarantee all the title fights have to be on TV. When's the last time you saw a WBC middleweight title fight that wasn't televised? So they need someone in the rankings who's going to be able to be on TV and sell on TV. So that's wrong. That's insanely wrong. It's unbelievable. But so the sanctioning bodies do not control anything, in my opinion. The promoters and the high-profile fighters, they control it. They hold the cards, and they dictate to the sanctioning. Every once in a while, a sanctioning body will step up and they'll punish somebody, but it's usually somebody who they can afford to dismiss. They can afford to lose. They don't punish the De La Hoyas of the world and the Floyd. A guy like Floyd, if they try to, he'd say, "Go keep it. I'll go get a different belt." He's got that kind of power. But the average guy, the average fighter is at their mercy. He doesn't have that kind of power.
And it's pretty sad. You I don't know if you heard all the things people were saying after Terrence Crawford last fought, where his own promoter was pretty much saying, "Yeah, but he doesn't sell. He's not market wise." And it's like, but it's come down to that, and it's pretty freaking sad.
Yeah, well, it's a type of thing where we're and that's kind of like what I was saying before. Like, these guys are like, Crawford is big, but he doesn't necessarily draw huge numbers or whatever. So he can't fight a no-name number one contender because it'll draw even less. So they have to bypass certain people to get in the ring with Crawford, and there's a lot of stuff they have to do instead of just doing what they're supposed to do.
Right.
But each fighter is almost like a different project, and they have to have different rules for him and different manipulations, to suit his level of popularity and his level of, money that he draws and all these type of things. So boxing truly is a business, and the sanctioning bodies, I guess they're at the mercy of it in a certain way, because like I say, in the NFL and the NBA, Major League Baseball, if you're like think about it, the best team in baseball, hypothetically, I don't even follow baseball. Say it's the Yankees when they were on their best, right?
Okay.
The Yankees at their best when they had Reggie Jackson, Ron Guidry, Craig Nettles, they're the powerhouse. Mm-hmm. If they played the worst team in the major leagues, whoever that was, they were still going to draw 50,000 people to Yankee Stadium. They were still going to come and sell millions of dollars worth of tickets and popcorn and parking, right? Every game they were going to do it no matter who they played.
Right.
But in boxing, it doesn't work like that. And so it's really, it's really a business. It really is, like, more than people realize. And I think people need to realize that when they complain about things, because business is business, I guess.
What do you think of boxing today? Like, all these fighters that we're talking about, compared to the fighters of, let's say, your time and during your prime. What do you see as the biggest differences that you see from yesterday and today?
Well, I'll say, like, during the 80s, and I guess even like a little bit before my pro career, but when I was, boxing as an amateur and everything, like you look at a guy like Sugar Ray Leonard, for example, between November of 1979 and November of 80, he fought Benitez and Duran twice in 12 months, right? And then you tack on another 10 months, and he fought Tommy Hearns. So in less than 2 years, Sugar Ray Leonard fought 4 mega fights. He was, could have lost any one of them, and he did lose one of them, and came back right away and beat the guy. That's not happening now. These guys are like Floyd Mayweather. Look, Floyd's a great fighter, skills, got the whole nine, right? And he followed the plan, the business plan, which is fine, but he took away from boxing in that he's trying to show people to be businessmen as opposed to hungry, world champions, like who love to fight, who have the same passion that they did when they were 15. Everything was so calculated, to make the most money. And I think a lot of guys are following that plan instead of going out there and taking it. You see guys today, they're young, and they want the big, guys like Haney and them, they've got the talent and everything, but they want these big mega fights, right? Without really fighting the iron. Now, I'll give you a comparison. You take a guy like Hagler, whose career is well documented. But even on a little bit lesser scale, you take Marlon Starling, for example. He's from my hometown, Hartford. Marlon Starling won the title in 1987, right? From Mark Breland. Huge upset. Like, he fought, Mark was not, we thought he was never going to lose at that point. But before that, Marlon Starling fought, and I can't even think of all of them, but he fought Floyd Mayweather Sr. twice. He fought Kevin Howard. He fought Tommy Ayers. He fought Jose Barrett. I mean, he fought Johnny Bumphus. I mean, he fought all these Jose Barrett, who was like 18-0 with 18 knockouts at the time. Marlon stepped up and fought like 12 contenders, undefeated guys, before he ever even got a shot at Mark. Nobody's going to do that today. There's nobody going to follow Marlon Starling's willingness, and then when he won the title, he took a beating from Breland. He fought totally opposite of how he had normally fought, because he knew to win the title against Mark, he was going to have to step out of his comfort zone and take abuse, which he didn't like to do. He didn't normally do, and to win, and he was willing to do that. I don't see that with guys today. Like, if they can't win with their style, a lot of them aren't winning. Like, they have that one way they're going to fight, and that's it. Marlon stepped up and faced iron right up until Breland. And Breland at the time was not meant to lose. We didn't think Mark was going to lose for years. So that level of how to come up, Hagler and Starling, guys like that level of commitment and desire it's not that it's not there, it's not necessary. There's no one today that's going to have to do that. There's not one guy that's going to. Adrian Broner's career, full-time world champion, his career does not compare to Marlon Starling's by any stretch of the imagination. And the crazy thing is, he'll probably get in the Hall of Fame based on that, and Marlon won't, which is
it's a travesty.
Reason enough to tear the Hall of Fame off the foundation and throw it in the woods. I mean, it's sick. It's sick. That's a reality.
And I've had Marlon on before. The original, I call the original Magic Man. I've had him on, and there's even a hurt in him, man, and it's pretty sad that he's not in that Hall of Fame. I mean, even I'm from Ventura County. I was born and raised in Oxnard, California. Our first county's world champion was Lupe Aquino. Well, Marlon beat him too, and Marlon is he was special, and not putting him in the Hall of Fame is a travesty, man. Why he never even got a shot at Ray Leonard was another one, but that's a different story.
Right. But you know what? That's another guy, Lupe Aquino. Yep. You can add him to the list of iron that Marlon had to beat and willingly fought to beat to get to these title fights.
And I think he fought Michael Nunn. He fought Michael Nunn too, right?
Yeah, as a welterweight. Yeah. As a welterweight, he fought Michael Nunn. He moved up the way. He skipped junior middleweight, went right to middleweight, fought Michael, and fought a good fight with him. Yeah, lost a decision, but he fought a good fight. Guys today aren't doing that. Contenders, they're not fighting. I mean, Marlon Starling had to fight Donald Curry in an NABF title fight. Like, nowadays, a guy will fight for the NABF title, and he'll fight a guy that his promoter picks, and they'll fight like in a high school gymnasium in their hometown in a 10-round fight, and they'll win the NABF title. Whereas back in the day, Marlon Starling had to fight Donald Curry, 12 rounds on CBS in Atlantic City, with Sugar Ray Leonard at ringside to win an NABF title. Nobody today is fighting Donald Curry unless it's for a world title. They're built different back then, and it's slowly but surely weakening the sport at its core.
You help fighters today, in their careers and stuff like that. What does it mean to you to still be in there and getting asked by these people to be in their corners?
I'll tell you what. I'll be honest with you. Like even you asking me to be on your show and talking to me as long as you have is amazing to me. It's it makes me laugh. Like, I grew up loving boxing, and now I'm here on your show, been talking for like 2 hours, and that I'm in a position where somebody would care what I have to say. So when fighters ask me for advice, I'm like a little kid. I'm very excited to tell them stuff. Like, I actually had a guy, an undefeated pro. He's like, I think he's 18-0. He called me just 2 or 3 days ago, and he's like, man, what do you think? Like, about my style, and what do you think? And I said, oh, well, man, as long as you ask. And, and I gave him the rundown, what I thought, and he was, super appreciative, and it was cool. It was amazing, like, that he cared enough about what I thought. And, so I'm just happy to be in it. I'm happy that you even know my name, to be honest with you. I think it's like when I was a kid, I wanted people to know who I was, and so it's kind of cool for me.
But like these fighters that when you do help them, is it hard to kind of give them your advice because you come from a different school than what they're probably accustomed to today? Is it pretty hard for you to kind of transition what you might know to what they know or what they've been taught?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've always been a pretty direct person. Like if a fighter, especially if a fighter asks me what I think, I'm going to tell him, 100%. I'm going to lay it down as raw as I can. And I'll tell you a funny thing. I went with a guy in Oklahoma. He brought me out. They brought me out a few months ago to take a look at him and work with him for a few days, just to, see what I thought about him and going pro and different things like that. And, so I went out there and I talked to him, and mostly I did the mitts with him, but I talked to him about the mentality of being a pro and what it means and what you have to do. And I showed him some drills and some exercises, and I told him kind of how to think. And he was appreciative. And then about 3 days later, I got an email from him, and I saved it. And he wrote a really nice thing, and he's like, listen, I really appreciate you coming out. You may not realize it, but you changed my life. You changed my mentality. You made me look at the game different. He said, I'm gonna use everything you said, and I'm gonna go forward with a different mentality. And by the time I had another guy from Canada come and train with me a few months ago, and same thing. The knock on him was that he was a little bit too laid, great boxer, but a little bit too laid back in his approach to the fight. And I worked with him on that, and I did a lot of talking to him about the mentality of a professional boxer. And his next fight, he was dynamite. Like it was like his fight was like a month ago. He was dynamite. All the reviews were great, and one of the writers wrote something like, man, where was this guy, 6 months ago? Like, what happened to this guy? Why is he so hungry now? And somebody who knew him commented underneath, and they said, oh, that's because he went and hung out with John Scully for a couple of weeks. So it made me feel good it makes me feel good that I'm able to give some sort of, contribution to a fighter. It's really kind of amazing, and it's almost funny to me, like that anybody would even ask me. But when they do, I go all in, and I draw from my own experience, and I try to help as much as I can.
And I think I asked that because today, you hear all the boxers after a fight when they're interviewed, they say, "Yeah, me and my team," and when you think about it, a lot of fighters today, they have their trainer, then they have their strength and conditioning, then they have chefs, then they have their dietitians, then they have this guy and that guy and that guy. It is like a team. If you had that in your time, would you be better? Would you have been not as good? Would you, I guess in other words, does a boxer need all that?
No. Like here's the thing. And it's, and people need to really listen to me, to really understand what I'm saying. Like you can get a guy and you can get him a chef, and he can cook the greatest foods on earth, like the most high protein, low fat, whatever it is. You can get him a great trainer who knows everything, and you can get him all these things, get him nice sweatsuits with his name on it and everything. But if he doesn't have it in him to literally decapitate someone, when the going gets tough, if he doesn't have it in him to fight through a bruised rib, to fight through a cold, to fight through a cut eyes, and whatever happens, then it's all wasted money, it's wasted time. You need a guy like Marvin Hagler, Bernard Hopkins, Marlon Starling, Mickey Ward. You need that. Like think about. I'll give you a perfect example. And this is what I told the kid that I told you said I changed his outlook. I told him about I said, Mickey Ward and Arturo Gatti, the ninth, forget the fight. Just look at the ninth round. I'm just talking about that one round. What it took for those two guys to come through that round is nothing short of miraculous. That is superhuman what they did. They were both at least twice each in the round ready to go. You know, if you remember, Jim Lambert said, you can stop at any time, Frank Cappuccino. You can stop at any time. Like, step in and stop this slaughter. And then Gatti comes back 20 seconds later and he turns the tables. I said, you can have all the best nutrition and take supplements and do everything you want. It's not going to help you in the ninth round. When the ninth round of Gatti and Ward comes for you, you better have something otherworldly in your brain that's going to push you through that. And that's not nutrition. That's not supplements. That's not what that is. That's something special. And you either have that in you or you don't. And no vitamin D is going to give it to you, period. So not everybody is cut out to be a pro. A lot of guys, they say, man, what do you think I should do? And I said, be honest with you, you shouldn't go pro. That's what you shouldn't do. You're not cut out to be. I've had good fighters myself, kids who were national amateur champions. People were asking them to turn pro, wanted to finance them. And I said, listen, you're not cut out for pro. You don't. I had one kid, he was a national champion. He won like 6 national titles, you know, beat guys who ended up being good pros, the whole nine, right? And people wanted him to turn pro. I said, listen, there's 2 problems. One, you get hit too easy with the right hand. And as an amateur, that's okay. But as a pro, that's a problem. 2, you're not a killer. You don't want to hurt people. And when you get to be a pro, above all else, like Sugar Ray Leonard. Sugar Ray Leonard was a pretty boy, but people forget or they don't see it. They don't realize behind that smile, you're talking about an assassin. Like Sugar Ray Leonard was a stone cold killer. Yeah. He wanted you dead. You know what I mean? And I had this kid who was very good, very talented, the whole nine, but he wasn't a killer. And I knew that. And I knew when the going got tough, it wasn't going to happen. And he avoided being pro. We didn't go pro. Now he's very successful. He's had a tremendous job for like, I think 20 years now. You know, he made the right choice. And a lot of people probably were critical of me that I didn't turn him pro. And I said, listen, I know this kid. I know the mentality, and he doesn't have it, period. So it is what it is. You gotta have something special to be a pro. There's a million pros out there, and probably a large percentage of them shouldn't even be pro. They have a license to be a pro, but you know, there's only a percentage of pros who are really like in their hearts, they're really professional fighters, and that's what they do. There's not a lot of those guys.
I think a lot of that honesty that you're talking about, I think that's why you have a lot of followers on social media. On your page there, you have a lot of funny stuff, like your shopping adventures where you're with your Aunt Fran, and how you take your aunt, you pick her up to take her out grocery shopping, and you post pictures and videos of all the funny little things that she tells you or that she's doing, you know, with you there. You know, people seem to get a big kick of it. At the same time, she probably wants to kick you in the butt. How did you get that idea to start posting about your Aunt Fran and, you know, talk about some of the feedback you get from that?
Right. Well, you know, the funny thing is, and I don't know if you noticed, but like, she has no idea that I do that. Like, she has no idea that all of these people all over the world know who she is, and they want to meet her. They want to have an Aunt Fran T-shirt. They want a reality show. They have no clue. And what happened was one day she said something to me like really crazy, and I was like, "What?" I said, "I got to put this on Facebook." And somebody commented, and I said, "Oh, let me show you what she looks like." So I waited till she looked away, and I took a picture of her from behind. So now every time we go shopping, I take a picture of her when she's not looking. So she has no clue. And she's always complaining that I'm on the phone, and she doesn't realize I'm talking about her with people on Facebook, and they're commenting, and she has no clue. So when I interview her, like on a video, the phone, that's why it's never on her, because she doesn't know she's being film. You know what I mean? So, because I don't, when people say, "Oh, you got to do it," and I say, "Look, I don't want to tell her because that'll ruin." I don't want her to start putting on an act.
Right.
Like I want the real her, because the real her is pretty comical. And she's. I mean, I have a picture of me and her. She's holding me in her arms when I was 1 year old, 1968. And now here we are in 2021, and we're still hanging out. So it's kind of cool and it's fun, and people get a kick out of it, and actually a few times in the store, at least 3 times I could think of, people I know were in the store and they saw me and they know who she is, and they come up and they're like, "Hi" to her. They're real excited to meet her, and she has no idea like why they're so excited. She's like, "Hello," she kind of just keeps going on and doing the thing because she has no idea that they even know who she is. So it's kind of a funny thing, but I enjoy it. It keeps me. It's one of the quirky things, I guess, keeps me going. It's funny.
There's been a lot of tragedies in the sport, and we brought some up in this conversation. But kind of like a Pritchard Colon or Gerald McClellan or Wilfred Benitez, a guy like John Scully goes and he collects items and gets them signed and auctions them off and then sends a check out to these particular people. And I guess my question to you is, what inspired you to do something like that, to do such a good deed like that? What all of us, when we hear these tragedies, we just kind of say, "Oh man, that kind of sucks." But you not just solely hear about it, but you go out and actually try to do something to, help these people. What inspired you to do stuff like this?
Well, I'll tell you, it's kind of funny. Like I was, when I first heard about Benitez, it wasn't until years after his career I didn't realize he was, in such bad shape. And then Gerald, who I knew as an amateur. So what happened was I heard that Wilfred needed some help. He needed a generator, I think, in his house or something, and it cost like $1,200. And I so I said, "Man, I gotta see if I can help get something." And so I put a notice online. I said, "Look, hey, everybody out there, if anybody could donate some money, I'm trying to raise money to help this champion." And I won't say who it is because I really don't think he wants people to know. But a very, very famous person in the boxing world sent me a message, and they were like, "How much does he need?" I said, "Man, it's like $1,200. He's like, "All right, well, where do I send it?" So I gave him the PayPal, information, and then like 5 minutes later, Wilfred's sister calls me. She's like, "Hey, this guy just paid for the whole thing." I said, "Oh yeah, just talk to him." And I said, "Man, I got a little network." I said, "I got this done in 5 minutes. Like I put it on Twitter at like 8:00, and like by 8:07, the money was in the account." And I'm saying, "Man, this is really amazing." I said, "I know a lot of people that want to help, and I have a lot of followers on social media." So, and I had some, what do you call, like memorabilia. And I'm like, "Man, I have these posters, and I know the guys on the poster, like a Roy Jones or James Toney, whoever it is." So I said, "You know what? I'm going to call these guys and ask them if they'll sign some stuff, because I know people love memorabilia." And so I just said, it's kind of crazy for me to have all these connections and not utilize them. Right. And so I just started reaching out to these guys, and I'm like, "Come on, man, I need you to sign this thing," And like today, I don't know if you saw it, but I just did it today. I saw Chocolatito in the hotel, and I have this Ring magazine with him on the cover. So I said, "Hey, listen, man, you sign this, I'll probably get $200 for it. I could send it to these guys." And so he signed it, no problem. It's actually sitting in front of me right now on the table. So it's just it's fun for me. It's interesting. It's easy. Like I wish more people in the game, because there's people with a lot more connections, like a guy like Bob Arum. Everybody he knows, he could call these guys and some of the biggest names in the sport and get it done. I just basically just use my connections, and instead of just sitting in my phone, they're being put to use, and everybody's been great. I've had some really, really good fighters more than willing to sign different items and sign pictures, and so it's been great. And I've been able to help mostly Gerald McClellan, Wilfred Benitez, and Pritchard Colon. And I've helped a few other guys who I don't say their names, out in public, but I've helped a few other guys as well who needed it.
That's an awesome thing, man. And, God bless for you doing that. Actually, for years now, you've been talking about the Iceman Diaries and all your experiences, and putting all these thoughts and stories into a book, which should be pretty fun to read. What's going on with that? I know it's been like years in the making.
I mean, I'll be honest. Like it's pretty much done. It's done. There's two things that have been holding me back. I just have to edit it, basically. The things that have been holding me back. One, honestly, I've just been busy, and I've really procrastinated. Ridiculously long time. I have a lot of things going on outside of it, and it diverts my attention. But the other thing is, and I actually just bought a new computer, and I needed to, because I get very frustrated because I have this computer for years, and it's slow. And I'm not a computer savvy guy, and it freezes up on me. It does different things, and when I get on there and the computer's acting up, it just takes my whole writing spirit away. You know what I mean? And it's hard to finish. So I just went out and I bought a new computer. I have to set it up and do whatever it is I have to do to get it going. Once I do that, they tell me it's going to be much faster than the one I have. If I can get a faster computer, I'll finish my book quickly, like very quickly. But for the time being, until I get that set up, I'm just going to be in a little bit of limbo. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I'll get it set up. And if it's as fast as they promise me, I could have the book done by summertime maybe.
Oh, that'd be awesome. I'd be a for sure buyer on that, as long as you sign it, John.
100%.
Last question, man. Something I ask everybody, even though that you're still a young man and you're probably got another 100 years, to look forward to. What I ask everybody, man, what would you tell what I call the 3 big S, which is your friends, your family, your fans? How do you want them to remember John Scully?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would like them to say that I was someone who loved boxing, who was pure about the sport. I love the sport in the same way that I did when I was 15. And I don't think a lot of people in the game can really say that. Like they don't have that same type of mentality and enthusiasm about it. But I do. And, more than anything, I care about the fighters more than anybody, more than, no disrespect, but more than reporters, more than announcers, more than promoters, certainly, more than fans, more than anybody. The fighters. I'm out for the fighters. I never call a fighter a bum. I never call a fighter a scrub, an opponent. I don't use those terms because I know what it is to be a fighter. So I'm all about the fighters and anybody who also is. But I'm just somebody who appreciates even being in the game and being allowed to be in it. It's really, really something. And my book, when it finally gets done, the Iceman Diaries, when it finally gets done, I'm positive someone from every demographic, fans, reporters, especially fighters, they're really going to like it. Like I have some good stories to tell. I think I have a good outlook, and at the very least, I think people will be entertained by the book.
John, in closing, and my thoughts on you and what I've heard from you and what I've seen of you, and all the years that I've been following you on social media and whatnot, is you're one of those guys that you've lived it, you've breathed it, and every day that's all your everyday thought. Boxers go to you. You're just that person, man. And I think because of that, I think that's why people go to you in boxing, and I think that's why I went to you for an interview. I love the sport myself. I love everything about the boxer. Not the politics or the marketing and all that stuff, but the boxer. You were one. You appreciate the sport. You love the sport. Like I said, you breathe it, and in a lot of ways, you are it. And I wish everybody was like you. And thank you very much for coming on to TheBoxingBar.com. And one thing, from me to you, man, I thought of you as being a guy that's 100%, 150% boxing, and I come out with the conclusion of you, and I think of you higher than that today. So thank you very much, and I appreciate everything you do.
Baby, man, thank you. That literally, in my entire life, that might be the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me or about me. I really appreciate that, man. I'm honored that you say that and think that, and I hope to really meet you one day in person and hang out with you a little bit.
Likewise, I appreciate that, John, and thank you very much for all your time.